Hello everybody and welcome to another installment of our special 5th anniversary Marvel Champions celebration, where we are moving through the new hero packs all the way back to the core set. We're skipping past all the other waves, changing the entire progress of the series just so that we can talk about the core set heroes, like I said, in preparation for the 5th anniversary. So we already covered Black Panther, we're covering Captain Marvel today, we're going to do Iron Man tomorrow, She-Hulk on Thursday, ending the week with Spider-Man, ending in what I would say is probably one of the top positions. But that doesn't take away from all the other heroes, because frankly, Captain Marvel is one heck of a hero. Having replayed her recently just to remind myself of what she's capable of, she is definitely not a hero to sleep on. She brings the heat where she needs to, although I do think that having watched her be played by a new player, someone who was fresh and new, I don't think they completely understood the power of Captain Marvel, but I also think that some of that might rely on the fact that we were playing against Rhino, and I have my grievances with Rhino. I think that he pushes you to focus so much on being in hero form because alter ego form feels like a huge liability when you only have 7 threat to worry about. So I think that they didn't get to see the full potential of what Captain Marvel's capable of. And also, it might also be the onus on me for not putting in the right kind of cards to really incentivize everything to do with using Carol Danvers to her greatest. So we are going to be looking at the hero pack. We're going to take a small break to look at a sample deck that I found due to a really good comment that was made recently. We're going to be looking at a Captain Marvel deck that utilizes at most 5 different packs, so the core set plus 4 other packs at most, and really look at what is the roadmap for a new player. So you got the core set, and you want to build around Captain Marvel. What packs might you want to pick up that will incentivize a good deck or somewhere to go? And having looked at the deck just to refresh myself on it, I'll also say that it does leave hooks for, here are cards that are good when you have a smaller card pool, but they are good candidates for changing up once you've made the full plunge and you have a bigger card pool. Needless to say, here we are. Let's talk about Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. She is a 4 recovery shield and soldier traded alter ego with the ability Commander. It's an action. You can choose a player to draw a card, limit once per round. So this is really great in solo. This just means that she has basically a 7 hand size. In multiplayer, means you can help out players that maybe they just need that one extra card, or they kind of have a dead hand, and another opportunity to draw something might open them up to something. And like I said, right away, this is what makes her a good solo hero, makes her a great multiplayer hero. I really love her in multiplayer, I will say that. Then we've got the hero proper. We've got Captain Marvel, a 2 thwart, 2 attack, 1 defense hero with the Avenger and Soldier trait. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't think about this. I was so wrapped up in Agent Venom and in War Machine, I didn't even consider the fact that Captain Marvel has the Soldier trait. So Cable brought us, I think, 1 or 2 cards that care about the Soldier trait, and I could add that to the deck. Didn't even think about that. Either way, I completely sidetracked there. Sorry. She has the Rechannel ability, which is an action. Spend a energy resource, heal 1 damage from Captain Marvel, draw a card. So she is just a card advantage machine. I always skip over this. I'm sorry. Carol Danvers has a 6 hand size, 12 hit points. I think we discovered last time that Carol might have the most hit points. No, She-Hulk does. And then on the other side, we've got a 5 hand size, 12 hit points. Captain Marvel is kind of deceiving because she kind of has a 7 and a 6 hand size because she has the ability to have extra cards. Notably, on this side, Sheik's the only one that's going to be drawing cards, unlike her alter ego side, which can dole out cards to other players. An additional thing to remember is you need to actually be able to heal that damage. akin to What Doesn't Kill Me, which you need to be able to heal 2 damage to do the recovery. In this case, you need to have an energy resource and you need to have taken the damage to draw a card. Now, in most situations, on the first turn, you're not going to be able to do this unless you are playing in a very specific archetype. You're not going to be able to do that. But moving forward, you probably will have at least 1 damage on you. And so you have the advantage of cutting off a little bit of that damage that the enemies have done to you, doing a little bit of recovery and gaining card advantage. She is a very well-rounded hero. If it wasn't for the fact that she only defends for 1, she'd be a very, very well-rounded hero. Overall, not really too much else to say. I guess this also does point to the fact that she does care about energy resources, very much like Thor in that respect. But it's right there, right on her hero card, is where you're going to want to be putting the priority of the energy resources. But quick and simple, good core set hero. Let's move on. Next up, we have her hero-specific ally, Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew. She's a 3-cost ally, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 health, Avenger Spy. Response after Spider-Woman enters play, confuse the villain. Obviously, as the game progressed, this became slightly less good because there are just villains that can't get confused. But I think overall, Captain Marvel wants to go into alter ego form, so having a card that explicitly just confuses the villain is good. 2 health is appropriate because you're going to want to put her back into the discard pile so that you can get her back later. So it's not a big deal that she's going to basically come into play, confuse the villain, get in an attack or 2, and then maybe chump block for you. Either way, she, like I said, well-rounded and I think is appropriately statted. Then, and I didn't realize this, she only has 2 copies, but she has 2 copies of Energy Absorption, which is a great resource card. Creates 3 energy resources, which, other than the fact that her hero card can only utilize 1 of these at a time, and you can't overpay and get a benefit from that. So not a great combination with her hero card, but with other cards in her kit, it is very good. Triple resource is so rare. Sometimes you have to jump through a lot of hoops. In this case, the hoop you had to jump through is you have to play with a specific hero who there's not a lot of downside to Captain Marvel on the tin, so getting a 3 energy resource is just great. Then we have 3 copies of Crisis Interdiction, a 2-cost event, Thwart. Hero action, thwart, remove 2 threat from a scheme. Then if you have the aerial trait, remove 2 threat from a different scheme. If I remember correctly, there's only 2 cards in her kit that are going to give her aerial. Classic Marvel Champions core set dilemma. They make aerial into this thing that is important, but not necessarily so important that it matters outside of a couple cards. But it feels like it's supposed to matter more, and it is what it is. Obviously, this is a more relevant card now. At the time, I feel like you sort of had to look at this as just a 2 for 2, and you might get that additional 2. But once you get into a larger card pool, I think that this is a pretty good copy of multitasking for the most part. Then we have 3 copies of Photonic Blast, a 3-cost event, attack, superpower, hero attack, deal 5 damage to an enemy. If you paid for this card using an energy resource, draw a card. So this is appropriately costed so that you can use her energy absorption card to deal 5 damage and draw a card. This does give her, I like that her attack event gives her card advantage. For the most part, this is not a hard one to hit. So for the most part, you will be finding yourself dealing a fair amount of damage. Not as good as some other attacks, but you do get the addition of this kind of gets a discount and another chance at trying something useful. And so overall, I would say it's a solid card. It's a solid, probably 4 out of 5 card. And I never feel ashamed to play it. Then we get into Energy Channel, which gives me memories of Bishop, which is not a bad thing at all. A 0-cost upgrade, superpower, max 1 per player. I don't remember if... Oh, I played this wrong. Okay. that's not a huge issue. I played this wrong in a situation with multiplayer like 2 weeks ago. I had 2 of these out. Didn't really change the course of the game. I probably was going to sacrifice the energy channel anyway, but it is a max 1 per player superpower with the action spend X energy resources, put X energy counters here. Hero action, so you can do that in Alter Ego. You can add the counters in Alter Ego in whatever form. You don't need to be in hero form. But then when you are in hero form, you can discard energy channel to deal 2 damage to an enemy to a max of 10 for each energy counter here. So you quickly drop a energy absorption onto the energy channel, and suddenly you can deal 6 damage. This I should probably goes without saying. This is my favorite card in the pack, just because it has the ability to be something to build up to, and then you can just get some damage off. Yeah, I think when I misplayed this, I'm pretty certain it was that there was 4 energy here, and I used energy absorption to put 3 counters here. Still dealt 8 and 6. Didn't change the course of the game too much. It's just I would have had to commit to dealing the damage right away. But it is a 0 cost upgrade with something to do with your cards at the end of the turn. If you suddenly find yourself like, I have cards I don't really plan to use, but I didn't use up over the course of the turn, let me just use any energy resources I want to build this up, and then when I need to, I can just quickly, boom, do the damage. This is such a fun card, and I think it really adds to Captain Marvel's appeal. Then we have 2 copies of Cosmic Flight, her card that grants Aerial. It is a 2-cost upgrade, Cosmic Flight, superpower. Captain Marvel gains the Aerial trait, and here interrupt, when Captain Marvel would take damage, discard this card, prevent 3 of that damage. For the most part, this is just a way to give her Aerial, and luckily you can have both of them out at the same time, so you don't lose Aerial if you drop one of them, but it is just kind of like a nice shield of, I am solid, but if I need to, I can drop back down, I can prevent some damage, not be out of the game, and then luckily her hero side does do some regeneration, so if you do find yourself needing to use this, you sort of almost blank 4 damage. So as long as you can survive, you are going to be solid. Or you can also blank like 6 or 7 damage, I suppose, with this, with the use of it. If you have to commit both of these to a single attack, you might be in a lot of trouble. I hope that you survive that scenario. Oh wait, never mind. Okay. And then we've got Captain Marvel's helmet, a 2-cost upgrade, armor, tech. Ooh, tech gets hit by oh gosh, what was that? Ant-Man's the yellow jacket scheme. God, that okay. We're getting off track here. 2-cost upgrade, armor, tech. Captain Marvel gets +1 defense, +2 defense if you have the aerial trait. So this just makes her a well-rounded hero, makes her even better at defending if you have the aerial trait, which that means that basically if you have these 2 in play, you are looking pretty solid defensively. You've got 3 defense, and if it really gets bad, if you get like just completely hit by like a 7 attack after all the boost icons, maybe you need to bump up that defense even more, but this, if you have these 2, you're going to have the core of a really good defensive game. And then the last card in the kit, we've got Alpha Flight Station, a 1-cost support, location shield, action, exhaust, Alpha Flight Station, choose and discard 1 card from your hand, draw a card, draw 2 cards if you are Carol Danvers. Didn't realize this was a shield location. I have yet to build a shield deck around her, but this is one more thing you could put into play, and oh god, what is it? It's not the helicarrier, it's a shield basic thing that like does a damage when a shield card comes into play. You can exhaust it or something. This is just a good card. Like it works in both versions. It does better if you're an alter ego. It gives you a reason to go to alter ego. Like I said before, Carol Danvers is just a card advantage machine, and this just contributes to that. Alrighty, here we are looking at an example deck of what you can do with Captain Marvel, and I think that aggression is a really great place to start. What impressed me the most about this deck was, first of all, it was published in the last 3 months, telling you that this is still, like, with the full expanse of Marvel Champions in mind, this is still a deck that I think, looking at it, once again, I think as I just said this at the beginning of the episode. But I think that there are cards right away looking at it that I go, okay, these are your cards that I would substitute out once I got more cards. But if I learned anything from a new player experience, it's always good to give low-hanging fruit of things that you could replace. As you can see, right off the bat, we've got the core set, we've got Galaxy's Most Wanted, which is the first Guardians of the Galaxy expansion, Star-Lord, and then either pick up Scarlet Witch or Iceman for this deck. And let's see here. So real quick, what stood out to me here was that I do think that Bug is a great ally that I hadn't really put a lot of thought into, but when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense for Captain Marvel, because Bug is going to be able to stick around. He's only got 2 health, but that 2 health is going to get expanded out over the course of the game, because every time your hero makes a basic attack, he's going to heal a damage. So once you get even bigger and you start to get into putting upgrades onto allies, he's the kind of person that you give him a little bit of extra health, you give him an extra bit of attack, and suddenly he's swinging for 2 or 3 at every turn. Then we've got Hulk, who is on the core set. I think for the most part this is pretty good. The only downside to this is that, and what's the skew here? Okay, so this does have a pretty good amount of punch resources. So he kind of a 50-50 on if he's going to be dealing 2 damage to an enemy or 1 damage to each character. So he might take himself out a little bit quicker. But overall, I think that he is something that you want in this game. The ability to deal 3 attack, the ability to attack for 3 is something that Aggression wants, and a cheap ally that can do that for you. Plus, he's got the resource that he provides the resource that you want as Captain Marvel is all the better. Mockingbird, Nick Fury, everybody knows them. Tigra. I kind of skipped this over with. I'm trying to think now. I think the deck that we talked about with Black Panther was also Aggression, so I've kind of got to think here. Once again, being able to just heal up, giving your allies more life in the game is always going to be important, especially with a character that kind of wants to be able to do their own thing. To have allies that are also doing their own thing and maybe can just have that longevity, I think is always important. And once again, she attacks for 2, just like Hulk, dealing that a little extra damage means that she's going to be able to heal up because she's going to be taking out minions. And I also think that an ally that focuses on either side schemes or minions, whatever, if they have a focus, then you just autopilot. You know what to do with that. It says it right on the card. It is being a guardrail for you. It is guiding you in the direction that you want to be using this card for. Chase Them Down, another core set card that I think definitely has its uses. I think just in Aggression, being able to get some threat off of a scheme, and this isn't confined to the main scheme. That's another important thing you have to pay attention to. It's so easy to focus on things that remove threat, but then when you realize it only hits the main scheme, suddenly that side scheme that has the icon that you can't thwart the main scheme. I'm blanking on it now, but it's just being able to focus on any scheme you want is an important thing to do. Then moving on to Dive Bomb, which is totally a reason to get Star-Lord. So once you can unlock more of the aerial trait, Captain Marvel gets better and better. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any other way to give her aerial other than the card she already has. But once you can unlock that, being able to just deal 7 damage to an enemy, 1 damage to each other enemy is such a great spread damage attack. And even if all you're doing is just using it for 4 for 7, obviously it comes with attacks. Obviously there are better things you could be doing. But this is a card that is tailored for aerial characters. It's one that you want to put into your deck because you're playing with aerial. It gives you a reason to want aerial, and it's just a great card. And then there are going to be other cards over the course of the game. I think it comes out of Wasp's deck. I don't remember what it's called right now, but it's a card that when you play a aggression attack, if you use mental resources, then you deal the attack deals additional damage equal to the cost of the card. So this suddenly turns into 11 damage to an enemy, 5 damage to each other enemy. That's really good. First Aid, which is right out of the core set. Haymaker, also out of the core set. This is one of those hooks that you want to pull out to put in new things into the fray, coming out of the Wasp deck. Okay, so we're investing in the Wasp deck. Okay, now I need to know what that's called. I'm almost certain that it's coming out of the... Oh, actually, is it coming out of Nova? I think it is coming out of Nova. Okay, yes. So Hone Technique. So this is like the aggression archetype of the first 3 years of the game. So yeah, I guess I got my lines crossed because Wasp does care about mental resources. So this is... Nova is what I would say is maybe the unofficial 5th pack you should be considering, because this is such a strong upgrade. But okay, into the fray is deal 6 damage to an enemy. For each excessive damage, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. So this is a good one of. It obviously should take out a minion and should help you with the main scheme. But it's just a reminder, it only hits the main scheme. Recuperation, which I'm not opposed to this card. I don't use it enough, but because Carol wants to be an alter ego, at least to gain some pretty good card advantage, this is just another way to heal back that damage. She has, how much is her recovery? Her recovery's 4. So she has a pretty decent recovery, and you don't have to exhaust to use it with the recuperation. That's pretty great. Relentless Assault, which, okay, this is a core set card. I thought this was a Galaxy card. Either way, okay, so you probably are familiar with this if you're a new player, but deal 5 damage to a minion. If you paid with a physical resource, attack gains overkill. This, I might say this could be more than a one-of, because it has an energy resource. I might want to say Haymaker could come out for this. I realize you're then restricting yourself to only dealing damage to a minion. I guess it kind of goes scenario to scenario. There is a world where this is probably better than Haymaker. Obviously, Haymaker can hit anybody, but Relentless Assault does a lot of damage. And then last would be Uppercut, deal 5 damage to an enemy in aggression, cost 3. Another one of those cards that you're probably going to sub out eventually, but in a smaller card pool is a fine card. Has a lot of resources. I would say this is the one part of the deck that I looked at that I said I might dial back the amount of resources to get a different card because there's a lot of one-ofs. This is a place, and you already have 42 cards, so this is something where I might say you maybe don't need Genius, maybe you don't need Strength. Strength is only asking you to deal damage with Hulk. Energy resources can do that. Yeah, so okay. I'm kind of two minds. You don't want to build the entire deck around Hulk, but I think this is more resources than you might need, and it would allow you to have extra copies of some of these one-ofs. Then Tac Team, which I would love to see this get more support, but it is a pretty good core set card to just get additional damage out over the course of the game. And then Combat Training, which is just going to make Captain Marvel even better. And Tenacity, which is another card that I would be very quick to get out of the deck as soon as possible. But I would say if Haymaker, Uppercut, and Tenacity are your upgrade path cards, that's fine. So overall, I like this deck. I think that it is a good example of what you can do with Captain Marvel and what you can do with a smaller card pool. And for the most part, you don't need to really do... A lot of this is the core set. And you really only... It's just like Bug and Dive Bomb and Recuperation are the only cards that I think come out of the course that are not part of the core set. So you are setting yourself up for, I would say a pretty good time. This is I like this deck. I looked at it. I built it to the side and just kind of like played around with it, just drew up some hands to see what it would feel like. I think this is a pretty good base deck. Now let's go talk about the obligation. And we are back from the deck tech, and it's time to look at the obligation. Family Emergency. Give to the Carol Danvers player. You may choose to flip to Alter Ego. Choose to either exhaust Carol Danvers and remove Family Emergency from the game, or you are stunned. This card gains Surge. Discard this obligation. So, actually, this is something I think is a good indication of a new player experience. This was a card that came up during one of my new player games. And this was like over a year ago, like a year and a half ago, when I introduced this game to a couple friends, and I gave it to one of my friends. And I said, hey, you can play Carol Danvers. I would advise, try to flip over to Alter Ego on a pretty regular basis. I hadn't even figured that out yet, but I knew that she was a good hero for that. And he didn't listen to that part, which is fine. But he got Family Emergency, I think, 3 times that day. And part of that was because he didn't want to change Alter Ego. He didn't want to exhaust to remove it from the game. So it came up when we shuffled back up, and he had to face it down again, and he was stunned. And I think that probably is a good indication of what a new player experience is, like how you can make these choices. And I think for the most part, it is best to just get this out of the game. But I think that it is valid to remember that new players might feel more obligated to keep themselves in the game as much as possible and not prioritize getting rid of these obligations, because their inclination might be, well, I might not see this card again. And unfortunately, like I said, it came up 3 times. I know we're fighting the Rhino, but you gotta go check on your brother at the hospital. And it's just, all vamping to say that, like, this is your run-of-the-mill core set obligation, but it does pose a choice for new players, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Moving into the Nemesis kit, we have Yon-Rogg, a minion, 2 scheme, 3 attack, 5 health, elite Kree minion. Forced response after Yon-Rogg attacks, place 1 threat on the Psyche Magnetron. That is the side scheme he comes with. We'll just jump into that real quick. So that is the side scheme that, when revealed, place an additional threat here for each player. So it has Insight 1, I think. Is that what it is? I could be wrong. I'm remembering this off the top of my head. And then also, you get an additional encounter card every turn. And it has a base, will always be the same, of 3 threat on it. So I think the fact that he adds threat to the side scheme is probably important. It does make it so that 3 is not entirely level. He does not have Quick Strike. I don't even think Quick Strike existed in the core set. Maybe it did. So he's not going to add, it's not going to become 4 instantly. But I do think that this is a minion that he's a little bulky. He might take an attack or 2, depending on what's going on. And you do want to get rid of him, because if you are worried about encounter cards, you're going to want to get rid of him, because he's just going to make the side scheme worse, or you just want to get rid of the side scheme right away. Prioritize what you need to prioritize, but for the most part, he's just kind of a speed bump. I'm not too concerned about him, and yeah, that's just Yon-Rogg. And then we have 2 copies of Kree Manipulator. So this has Surge. After this card is revealed, reveal an additional encounter card, and when revealed, place 1 threat on the main scheme. And then the boost ability of, if the villain is making an undefended attack, place 1 threat on the main scheme. So this does change things a little bit. You kind of want to defend once the Nemesis set has been shuffled into the encounter deck, because that could change the math on how much the main scheme is going to be progressing. At the same time, this is pretty benign. It's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, Surge, that means that basically when this gets added, it's almost as if it doesn't get added. It doesn't really affect the size of the encounter deck, because it's just going to do its thing and bring up another thing. So yeah, I don't have too much more else to say. I don't, once again, it's kind of a speed bump, because Captain Marvel already thwarts for 2. So she's a pretty good thwarter, all things considered. She's not excellent. There are better thwarters, but she can handle the threat enough that this isn't much more than a speed bump. And last card for the day is Yon-Rogg's Treason, a Treachery. When revealed, discard each energy resource from your hand. If you discarded no cards this way, this card gains Surge. So this is going to take away the energy the resource that you care the most about. I would say most Captain Marvel decks care the most about energy, so this is going to strip that resource away from you. And if you already have been stripped of those resources, or that's not something that your deck is focused on, then this is just another Surge. It's just going to push you through to the next card in the encounter set. Maybe that's going to be the Manipulator card. Maybe it's going to be Shadow of the Past. Who knows? But yeah, for the most part, it's interesting to think that this Nemesis set almost doesn't add anything to the encounter deck because it surges so much. That is Captain Marvel. And there we have it. We've got Captain Marvel today. I would say she is she's one of the characters you're supposed to play with right away. It's Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. I think she is a great first player experience. I think she provides you with card advantage, which in a game where cards are your resources, that is important. I think to just lighten the load, to help make playing cards easier. Spider-Man does the same thing. He has a different way of doing it, but I think putting two characters that naturally have card advantage into the hands of a first-time player is not a bad thing. I think all the core set heroes have the reasonings for why they would be a good first-player experience, but I think Captain Marvel is really good at that. She's gonna heal up. She's gonna lighten the load of taking too much damage. She's gonna draw cards. People love drawing cards, especially once you get invested into the game. You know how much you love drawing cards. Captain Marvel is great for that. But overall, we will be we're doing this all week, so I will see you tomorrow when we're going to talk about Iron Man. That's going to be a very different experience, I can only imagine. For the most part, like, subscribe, looking for as much watch time as possible, looking for as many subscribers as possible, because I think if there's one thing, I know we've already done the blurb about going and consuming other content, but I think if there's anything else I can say about it, about liking, subscribing, everything, is please watch as much Marvel Champions content as you can, because the bigger the numbers are across the board, the bigger the community is, the easier it's going to be to make this seem like a legitimate game that deserves to have sponsors, and rising tide raises all ships. If it's good for me, if it's good for Ray Plays Games, if it's good for Critical Encounters, it's good for everybody. This game is 5 years in. It's, in my mind, it's legitimate. There's probably another 5 years left in it. Who knows? Maybe there's more than that. I think as a Marvel fan, I think there's a lot that can be mined from this game. And if we raise up everybody looks better. Before you know it, we're going to be having sponsorships, and we're going to be having real money coming in. And this isn't just going to be a niche hobby. It's going to be a cottage industry. I'm blabbering on, but all to say, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great day.